So I thought UK was last week.
Yes. Ready to move forward.
I'd rather but she's always been dry. It's on hold right now. Sorry.
You all keep talking, we got about 3 minutes before we start. Not to break the awkward silence, but keep talking.
It started to look official.
Yeah.
Wait, do something dumb. Flip something on the ground. Dump a bunch of water on a package. Like, make it something comical to where it's like, we're real people too. If you haven't already and you want to speak, we don't mind signing in at the podium so we can kind of streamline the process.
Yeah, if you didn't catch that, if you want to speak, go ahead and sign in on the podium.
Yes, sir, buddy. What are you on the path of? What are you here for?
James Harrington. I live right up the road from him.
You trying to get him to stop or start? You trying to get him to stop or start?
No, I'm trying to get him to keep the nose out of other people's business.
There you go. He's my cousin. He's my cousin.
Yeah. So I hope I get to speak.
Yeah.
You've got the right
You
green,
hear
you're
him?
not right.
Hold it.
You're not
James?
right green yet, are you?
I don't know what case number we are.
At a certain point.
What's the case number?
Well,
Probably is 2024-12.
Since they all are the same. Do you know those names? Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's it.
Never mind.
that's it.
Very good.
That's it. My light's on.
It reads to my phone.
Wanted, I'm not.
You absolutely silent, you just steaming.
We'll see if I'm capable.
Staring. I don't know. I don't think that's possible.
I don't either, but we're going to try it. My husband's challenged me.
If we had it streamed, he could keep an eye on it, kind of like drinking in our bed, but thankfully we don't stream it because it'd be hard to do that.
Yeah. I don't have it up here just in case.
I want to say, I know he went in for it, but he couldn't do it. This one time.
We were sitting there on the stage. Oh, yeah, you did. In the theater at Scott County High School because it was everybody dumped in. I had to phone down by the university and call or something.
Are we ready? Are we ever going to be ready?
After that, since
Y'all ready?
yeah, because you know it's to me. Never. You're rude.
Rachel, you ready for this?
I am. Hi, Rachel. As he can be.
Nope, my name's not signed.
You do or you don't? My name is June. Phone and Molly's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a little bit of old country. Are you still doing your little police fraternity?
Yep. I'm not president anymore. I didn't run for president this time. I needed somebody to be sworn in.
Snipped at you.
Make sure. The only reason I'm moving down is because Georgetown-Scott like 4 times a week at church. In the background, something I was with my dad. My dad.
I wanted to say something.
And then my dad used to get all the time. My mother-in-law, and now it's kind of
That's fine. Yeah, all right, we ready? All right, if I can have your attention, we're going to go ahead and call the Scott County Board of Adjustments into session for a specially called meeting on application S 2024-12, not really an application, but a review of conditional use permit. Before we start, if you're going to speak, if you will stand for me, please, if you plan to speak, and Charlie will swear you in.
You swear affirmative statements you're to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief. And please, if all of you have not yet signed in, please do sign in. Anyway,
All right.
yes, thank you.
Before we get started this evening, because these are specially called meetings for what I will call sensitive subjects, before we get started, bear in mind, this is facts only. And we know everybody has an opinion. Trust me. Everybody has an opinion. You're allowed to express your opinion, but I would ask you keep the opinions down to a nice level, an honest level, if you will, please. Let's not snip at each other. That happens quite frequently. I know you're not surprised. All right, so we have some that's for, some that's against. It's okay. We're going to figure it out based on the facts, but I do reserve the right that if anybody gets out of hand, I will ask you to stop at that point. We'll try to keep the comments down to a bare minimum time frame if we can. I don't think any of us want to be here at 10 o'clock tonight. Anybody? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm hungry too. So we're going to try to move this along in a very respectful manner, and in order to do that, we'll try to keep peace with everybody. All right? Fair enough? Elise?
So we've assigned this a file number, but it essentially is a review of an existing conditional use permit granted in April of 2023 for a home occupation to convert an existing building into a shop for restoring classic vehicles. Property is 4957 Muddy Ford Road with direct and arterial access off of Muddy Ford Road, kind of north of the S curve off of Muddy Ford Road, which is north of Cynthiana Road. It's an A1 agriculturally zoned property, approximately 10.34 acres. So this is a larger kind of zoom out of the property. Most of the activity is occurring closer to the road where an existing home site, an existing building from a previous conditional use permit from the 90s where church was occurring at the time, which is that white roof building there. And then it was multiple hands have held the property for a while and we're presently on the current owner, who in April of 23 applied for a use permit. I did kind of take aerial imagery of the progression of the property, so you can kind of see from our earliest imagery we can find that accurately shows the property to December of 2023. And I'll kind of go into it in a little bit here. So at the April 23rd meeting, we were kind of given information and someone had applied for an application for the converting of an existing shop space, which is the, I have a pointer now. See? It's, this kind of space up here, into a, kind of area for a business to operate out of. We were told that there was, activities would be occurring inside the building with proper ventilation. A pickup delivery service would be available for vehicles being serviced, primarily focused on classic vehicles, and that no greater than 4 individuals were working on site. In terms of visual impact, they'd stated that there was some personal or worker vehicles on the property, but there was plenty of open space for parking. They were gonna use an existing driveway. There were no signs planned as part of the use. And at the time when we were reviewing it, there was no fence up on the property. So after all of that stuff, this is just kind of an excerpt where you can kind of see the point out. The findings were kind of our typical home occupation findings. This is under home occupation because the agricultural zone does allow for home occupations and activities to exceed the limits of the definition of the ordinance, which talks about area locations within homes, percentage of coverage of the home floor footprint, incidental to residential use, that type of deal. So this tends to be our kind of uses. At the time, it was, and you can refer to the minutes, it was kind of described as this smaller 1 car a month type of ordeal with record used occasionally if it were only if in car is inoperable and would be a satellite of an existing building business. The recommendation was for approval, and the board did unanimously vote for approval with 6 conditions of approval. First 4 being our typical 4 for use permits, and then the 2 additional ones regarding to business operations in order to try to mediate and keep as much commercial activity during what you would expect working hours to be, and like resting hours being less active and no business activities. In the installation of a buffer on the property, because you can kind of see with this aerial imagery here, again, this is taken in the winter or prior to plants getting their leaves in. You can see that there's not a whole lot of screening from the road. So the idea was to have a 6-foot tall buffer that would shield the activities on the property from the adjoining property owners, just to keep everybody kind of mediated there. Again, this is an aerial here. This is a recent photo taken, I believe, the 13th or 14th of February on the property. So it is in a time of year that the trees do not have leaves on it, but this is just as you're driving by the property at the road, looking towards the property, you can see they have kind of, they're a little bit above the grade of the road. You can see the residence, the former building, and it's difficult to see, but there is a little piece of the new shop space that you can see in the imagery from December of 2023. We had been notified by adjoining property owners that there were some activities on Facebook and on the site that were indicating that the potential of expanding operations on the property. So we did our due diligence and we found 2 posts on the company Facebook page regarding their relocation to Georgetown. The first of which just a general announcement, which is on the left for our board members, and then the kind of site viewing via drone footage on the right of the property, which I do have embedded. So this is what is posted by the applicant at the time of when we were about reviewing this. You can see this aerial imagery, this additional space that's been added or appears to be added, and site activity. There's clearing of everything. Again, this is also winter, so it may not be the most full foliage, but it's still pretty cleared up property with not a lot of green space and those types of things, and that type of activity. I have 2 screen grabs here, the first of which being this kind of looking down. South is north on this, or up on the page, north is behind us if we were kind of in the drone. And then this is the same one kind of looking southeast. So you can kind of see the existing space in the white building, and then another space that you don't see in other aerial imagery from 2019 directly behind it with in the black roof. I don't know why that's there. When we were made aware of this, there were 3 findings that our enforcement officer kind of had determined. The first of which being the the first of which being the new building, or what appeared to be a new building, again with that black roof, directly behind the red, or the white building. The second of which is the Facebook page indicating that the business had been closed in Lexington, and that the Muddy Ford Road would be the primary location. And then the third of which being that drone footage. So you can mostly see it in this shot here, where this area that appears to be, or is kind of around that building where they are using, where they were approved for their use permit, not having that opaque buffer, that 6-foot tall buffer. So that's kind of what we've made a determination on. We alerted the property owner that we had heard a complaint, we had made these findings, and that they were going to come before the Board of Adjustment for review of their permit to determine the best path forward, because this is not a use by right. This is a conditional use that, if it can fit in an area with reasonable amounts of conditions and it doesn't take away from the character, it could occur on the property, but only after it meets our expectations, rules, and it isn't going to negatively impact people. So when it came back, and when we were aware of these things, we've kind of taken our necessary steps we need to kind of proceed from here. And that's all I have. So we're now before the board today, about a little bit under a month later, reviewing this to determine what the next steps are. If the enforcement officer's findings are, and facts have been found that say that this is legitimate expansion and operations outside of the use permit, what are the next steps? There's kind of 3 options going forward I can kind of mention if you guys would like, but the first of which is kind of our option to revoke the permit based off of whatever we determine tonight. The second of which is to come into compliance with the April 2023 conditions of approval, which are the 6 that I mentioned previously. And the third of which is requiring resubmittal for a conditional use permit. Since this has been advertised as a review, we would want a complete reapplication and rehearing at a different meeting, because again, when we send out advertisements and in all the textual stuff, it's stated as a review. It's not stated as review and amendment, because that's not something that we're here tonight for. And if the board is so moved to amend or require reapplication under new use permit with new conditions, understood, it's a change in the permit, we would want to re-advertise and go through our process as if this has never happened again, but knowing that this is a permit that's being expanded upon.
Okay. Any questions for Elise? All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're the applicant, correct?
I am.
All right, would you like to speak?
When I was here last time, everybody was concerned about the vapors getting out into the air and being impacted on anybody else. At that time, there was a slab, I seen in the picture, I think that one there is a slab of concrete poured behind the building, and that's where the paint booth was originally going. It's not, the building that's previously there isn't tall enough to meet the requirements to have for a roof over top of the paint booth that you do the spraying of the chemicals in. So we put the booth out there and got a carport building to have a roof over top of that. I've purchased a Bobcat and I got another piece of equipment. So that building has a lean-to on the side of it to park some of my equipment in, and also be a roof over top of the paint booth, trying to be in compliant from the previous time I was up here. The pictures that they've taken are just a little bit old. Currently, there is a 6-foot buffer up. I didn't plan on trying to run my business out of my house. It's not the prime location for a business that I do. I had it for a satellite shop. I spent all my money trying to get the thing situated so I could do the old cars out of it, because I had the other shop and I had some other guys working for me. Over the course of the year, I've done lost a couple of guys. The place I was at, I was on a month-to-month rent. He wanted to jack the price, and some other company come in and kind of moved me out of the way. So this is pretty much where I'm at as far as work. I'm not got no big 10,000 square foot shop with a bunch of employees. It's me and my cousin usually, just trying to take care of the kids and pay the bills. I mean, I fix cars, that's what I do, but I got a Bobcat and we got a mobile blasting company that we're trying to start. And I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say. I know I shouldn't have advertised that on Facebook, and that was more of a miscommunication with my team that does the marketing. When that was posted, we wasn't even open. All that stuff that you seen was people doing construction, because I got this dumped on me at the end of January, and I had 30 days to get out of the building that I was in. You see the crates are full of my shop stuff because I don't have no place to put it. I got a spot the third of the size that I had. So I'm just I'm out there trying to figure it out. I don't want to impact nobody or, cause nobody else no problems. I've done everything that I could to be in compliant with the recommendations from the last time I was here. And just somebody felt like that I guess I was going about it the right way or wrong way. And once I seen that was on the Facebook, I had my marketing people take that off of there. But that's
Yeah, Facebook's an awful place.
oh, I know it, right?
Just pointing it
I
out.
just
Has your business picked up since
no,
you moved
it's
from
not.
Lexington?
No, and I'm finding out that most of my customer base was out of Fayette County, and I had 10 jobs on the wait list while I got transitioned, and over the course of the last 6 weeks, I've got 2 that's still on the list. I mean, I've got to try to regroup in order to, find me some work to bring in. I don't have the 400,000 drivers that I was in the middle of in Lexington to find the work from. So I've got a lot of things to sort out here.
This is by no means an attack on you personally, and please understand that.
Mhm.
And I don't want to put anybody out of business. I don't think any of us do. We want business in Scott County. Some of us up here run a business of our own. The question becomes, why did you not apply for another permit or a building permit or anything before you got this started? Because I don't think you have a building permit either, correct?
No, so the thing about the building, it was a carport building. And when I bought it, they showed me a seal that came with it. It's from Kentucky. And how I just put it on top of that concrete, and it had a lean-to on it. I didn't know, honestly, that I had to have a permit for it. They put it up in a day, in the afternoon. It's like just a metal stick-up building. It didn't even have walls on it when I bought it. And then one of my cousins come over to dinner. He's like, man, did you get a permit for it? I said, what do you mean a permit for it? I said, it came with a permit. He's like, no, you got to get a permit for it. So then when I go down there and I filed for the ag seg for the permit for it, I was already needing to come down here, so they didn't want to give me the permit and afraid to infringe on anything you guys impose.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not yet.
Tommy?
No.
Rachel? Janet?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So, this is the buffer.
It's a temporary buffer, it's a silk fence.
That's a 6-foot. That wasn't in the picture. It's just along the street.
Yeah, it's a silk fence. It's got
Goes
to be all
into
the
it.
way.
I took a picture of the buffer I was showing.
Oh,
Yeah, I was out there, and that's the black buffer you're talking about.
oh,
right
the
there.
fence?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so you have.
And that's not even I'm originally designed, you see all the blocks out front?
Yeah.
I got a nice big pretty retaining wall that's going behind my house, and I'm gonna have a nice fancy privacy fence up the front, but I'm trying to be in compliance, so I just went on and put the buffer up until I could get that done.
Yeah, figured that's what it was, a temporary.
I really haven't tried to call them that.
Right. God knows.
Good evening. I thank you all for the opportunity to address the board with some concerns we have as a community regarding the conditional use permit that was afforded last April. We have some visuals here, and initially the question is, how did, what we have?
Could you state your name first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Lynn Witter?
Thank you.
Yes.
And where do you live?
I live on 5,000 Muddy Ford Road.
Sorry, please continue.
Okay, this is our initial, let's see, I guess we'll do it this way. This is what the initial property is. Elise had something that was very similar to that she showed on her display. And again, this is just kind of the most recent drone. We're asking, how did that address change in that way? Okay. Thank you. And this, which was the original church property on the left, turned into what we are seeing, and this is not even the most recent, but we see multiple buildings, including this small structure here. There's the stack for the paint booth behind. A lot of things were not included in that conditional use permit that was allowed last April. We also have record of a farmstead exemption that was applied for after the buildings were all up. And the farmstead exemption states in section 4 that it's an exemption requested is a dwelling or another type of a building incidental to operation and maintenance of the farm, such as barns, sheds, etc., and is not a commercial or public building. So his carport that he went to get approved for the farmstead exemption doesn't even apply. It's not an agricultural use at all. We have, okay, this is just a statement that it was requested after the barn and everything else was already there. It's a little bit like putting the cart in front of the horse. And here's a side view of what was submitted to the building department as far as, just a general layout of what he had constructed there and the location of the paint booth within that Morton-type building or garage space. The Georgetown Building Inspection Department was asked about a permit. The permit has not been approved. It's currently on a hold status. And this is just a photo of what the side of that building that's being requested for agricultural use looks like. For those who are not familiar, this is a paint booth, complete with a stack that is the building inside of the ag building. This is just the Kentucky revised statute. If no building permit has been issued and the builder begins or continues to build, that can be and is looked upon in a very negative fashion. It's not supposed to be. The CUP, conditional use permit, was offered for classic car restoration, a home business. We as a community opposed that. One of the board members specifically asked how many cars he would bring. The applicant answered maybe one a month. Our result being February, which Elise has already brought to the attention, advertising a multi-building full-service auto body repair shop. The conditional use permit also requires the applicant to return to the board for review and approval prior to any changes. There's pretty substantial changes to the original, the white building right here was what was original. This is all add-on. And the applicant did not come before the board for authorization of that. And this is just kind of a scripted image of how this might fit inside there. We've got zoning violations and environmental concerns. We're talking about a body shop here. There are waste materials. This is an ag zone. And we do have floodplain concerns, water concerns, air concerns. We have a farm pond that is about 180 feet downhill. We also have Eagle Creek, which runs to the front of the property. Those are both tributaries that need to be kept safe. And on February 21st, the EPA did open an investigation to address these environmental concerns. We initially contacted Just for Air, but they felt it appropriate to discuss with the soil and water divisions as well. At our meeting back in April, the slide to the left showed the proposed shop space. This is actually a slide directly from the presentation. The right side is kind of what we've got now. Not pretty. The property's become a barren hardscape. Most of the trees on the property were bulldozed over. This is not even the most recent image. There's an additional building on site that's not in this particular slide.
Where's the other 8 acres?
Please?
Hang on.
Okay, we were granted home occupations. They can be a professional office, one professional, no staff. This occupation must be incidental to the principal residential use of the residence, in no event to exceed 300 square feet. There's to be no exterior evidence. And most importantly is Part C. The home occupation shall not generate any atmospheric pollution, light flashes, glare, odor, noise, vibration, truck, or other heavy traffic. And guess what we've got? We've got a wet finishes, auto restoration, auto body shop. The definition of zoning for heavy industry are those industries whose processing operations result in the outdoor storage or processing of materials or products, the emissions of any atmospheric pollution, visible light flashes or glare, odors, noise, vibration, which may be heard or felt off premises, or those industries which constitute a fire, explosion, or other hazard detrimental to the health and welfare of the community or adjacent property owners. In April, the board attorney, Charlie Perkins, made a comment, and he was trying to help, keep everybody on the same page and lead them in the direction, where we needed to go with this. This home use needed to be specifically named in the ordinance to be essential to or promote the community's interest and to be integrated into the area with appropriate conditions. Following are some quotes from the residents that were taken out of the minutes on April 2023. This is an ag area. The business doesn't fit. If vehicles are painted, there will be fumes. This is just the first step for more businesses, noise, and paint particulates. And finally, we live in the country, and industry does not belong here. We've taken out of some Kentucky statutes that the application for conditional permits allows the proper integration into the community which are specifically named in zoning regulations, which we've discussed, and may be suitable only in specific locations in the zone and only if certain conditions are met. The board does have the ability to approve, modify, or deny any application. They also have the power to revoke conditional use permits or variances for noncompliance. And furthermore, the board shall have a right of action to compel offending structures or uses removed at the cost of the violator. Granting of a conditional use permit does not exempt the applicant from complying with all requirements of building, housing, and other regulations. This has not been happening. The applicant shall have the duty of informing the board of modifications made, and the failure to produce such shall be grounds for the board to revoke the conditional permit after a hearing before the board. The administrative official shall have the power to inspect the land or structure, and Elise and her team have taken that upon themselves. If the Board of Adjustments finds that the facts in the report are true, the Board of Adjustment may authorize the administrative official to revoke the conditional use permit and take necessary legal action to cause termination of the activity on the land on which the conditional use permit authorizes. On our findings, there were three, and don't get me wrong, P&Z and the board, you all have acted in good faith based on the information that was provided to you at the time of the application. 3 findings were listed by P&Z, that they would exist, or they operate out of an existing structure. It's expected to have a small staff, and the conditional use permit should not negatively impact public health, safety, or welfare. In that period of time, multiple buildings have been erected. This actually is a relatively new photo. It shows the barrier fence to the front. There is a building, another building, in addition to that ag building, which is right here, which that popped up over a weekend. The residents are complaining about an increase in heavy traffic. And as far as the proposed use, it absolutely impacts health, safety, and welfare. We do have an EPA investigation underway.
Ma'am, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You keep throwing out the term EPA. Are you talking about federal EPA or state DEP?
We're talking about the group in Frankfurt.
That's state DEP?
Yes.
Okay.
And as a note, we found that the real estate values in the surrounding area is already being negatively impacted. Realtors are shying away from our area because they don't know what's happening there.
If I might interrupt a second, can you give us a basis for that last?
Yes, yes. Opposite the project there, 4957 Muddy Ford, there are 3 lots for sale. One of which has already been purchased. The other was being considered by, actually it was a firefighter and his wife from Lexington were very interested in the property. Upon finding that out and also discussing with their real estate agent, they decided this was not for them. So,
But there's more interest being shown in those lots now, because I know people that's
I was
interested.
going to say, we know the individual you're speaking of, so.
okay.
Yeah.
So, the point being, this is not helping our community. We are very aware of it, and we don't like any of it. We understand that, the cup was issued in good faith, but we do not feel that it's been held up on the other end. As far as the staff recommendation, the conditions of approval was to be subject to all requirements of the zoning. There are no records that we found as of March 6th to be present. The permits are listed as being in a hold status, and multiple buildings have been erected on the site without permit or inspection. The staff recommended that only any facet of business be operations during the hours of 8 to 6, Monday through Saturday, and the 6-foot tall opaque buffer. We've seen, there, in the past 2 weeks, this has been, brought up to kind of do some screening in the front. There's no visual block from either of the sides. What has in fact happened is that the project site is active 7 days a week, continues until after dark, and there are high-intensity lights illuminating the area, which is distracting and disruptive to the neighbors. As a community, we believe that Mr. Harrington misrepresented the intended use of the property when coming before the board in April. And he planned to use the cup as a means of opening the door for his full-scale business, not the overflow of jobs from his then location in Lexington, which he stated at that time would remain open. This Lexington location has since closed, contrary to the statement provided in April 23. Wet Finishes LLC does not meet any of the qualifications of a home business under which the cup was granted and could not be less suited for an agricultural community. Mr. Harrington began changing the original building in late 2023. By early fall, he'd bulldozed all trees, creating a hardscape on the top area. The majority of this complex has been built out within the past 2 months and continues to this day without authorization from any governing body. Condition 6, we've already discussed the buffer. Mr. Harrington, we believe, has shown blatant disregard for the process in place to protect our community. He misstated before the board under oath in April of 23 as to the intent and scope of the proposed project. He's trying to force a heavy industry business into our A1 zone, and apparently does not believe the board shall have the right of action to compel offending structures or uses removed at the cost of the violator. We are an agricultural community, and as such have the right to maintain our chosen lifestyle without concern about health for ourselves, livestock, domestic animals, those in our care, or stability of property values on the land we call home. Moving forward, we're requesting for the board to rescind the conditional use permit, to stop Wet Finishes from doing business in any capacity at 4957 Muddy Ford, and that all buildings constructed without approval of the board be removed from the property at Mr. Harrington's expense. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I get a copy of that for the record, please?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Can I ask you a question too? Because the
Yes.
last thing that I want to do, and we're not here, I don't know Mr. Harrington personally, but the last thing I want to do is slander Mr. Harrington or anybody else involved with that. So I'm going to go back to the state DEP for a minute, because
Okay.
I'm very familiar with state DEP. Unfortunately, that's my background. Okay,
Oh,
so
great. So you're familiar
maybe.
with Diana Davidson?
I am. So
Okay.
let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Was the complaint, was it filed complaint, or was it a routine inspection, or was it a violation? The reason they came in?
They've actually opened a case file in regards to, I sent them the original packet of information that we had gathered. Diana got back in touch with me and said we're extremely interested, but we also want to involve other agencies, which I mentioned during my presentation. When everything kind of came to a screeching halt, I got in touch with her and I said, hold off on the inspection. There's nothing actively being done at that site right now. She said she appreciated the heads up and to let her know when we felt that an inspection, may be more appropriate.
So
But yes,
just to ensure that I'm on the same page, there was a complaint filed.
yes.
So the DEP didn't come out on Mr. Harrington
No.
on their own. It was a
No,
complaint
they did
filed.
not. They were
Okay.
unaware until brought to their attention.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Anybody? All right, thank you. All right, hang on just a second.
Well, I was gonna help with that. If you need the number that the EPA gave, I can get that.
No, trust me, I've got it. Know him pretty well, unfortunately, so I've got it. All right, we always go.
Darren, let me ask
Go ahead.
Mr. Harrington.
Yes, ma'am, sir.
Okay, are you painting vehicles now?
No, not yet. The paint booth isn't always hooked up. I
Okay.
kind of stopped whenever everybody started throwing a hissy fit about what I was doing.
So when you do start painting, will there be fumes and oil?
No, that's what the booth, I paid $100,000 for this booth.
Okay.
It contains all that and runs it through a filter system before it puts it back out in the air.
And what about noise concerns? Will neighbors be able to
I don't know
hear any noise?
if I took pictures, but I've even went, so where all the body work and stuff gets done in the original building that you granted me back last year, all that building's been spray foamed and everything. I mean, like, you could be next door and I mean, I could be in there having a party, you never hear it.
So just for clarification, the paint booth meets all the OSHA standards.
Oh, yeah, man, this is probably the nicest paint booth in the state. Like, the guys that I buy my paint from, they can't believe it. I invested this in myself. Like, I really tried to take care of any kind of worries anybody had. This is my house, you know what I'm saying? I live there forever, so.
Okay.
It
Alright.
just happens to be what I do for my hobby.
All right, thank you. All right, so I want to make sure we go to each side. Obviously, there's a little bit of a dividing line I can see. So does anybody on this side want to speak? Anybody else?
I didn't sign up to speak, but can I?
Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and I think I know your address. But state your name.
I live there. So my name is Sheena Southworth.
Well, excuse me, you swear affirm the statement you're about to make the truth, the best of your knowledge?
Absolutely, yes.
Excuse me, first name again?
Sheena. Sheena, like Sheena of the Jungle. EENA. And so I just wanted to kind of add to what's being said, actually. We've not done any business yet. All of the vehicles that have been there, the reason we're working every day, all day, it's not because we want to, it's because we're trying to prepare our building and prepare our space to be in compliance. We had been working in Lexington, so we didn't have the time to do anything with this property. When we got our 30-day notice to remove from Lexington, we immediately put all of our time and all of our effort and all of our energy and all of our money into this. So that is why we're there all day, every day. All of those vehicles that you see are either family vehicles, friends' vehicles, or contractors. That's all that's been there. That's why there's so much traffic right now. That is something that we have tried to let our customers know. We're going to try to offer a drop-off and pickup service because we don't have any. We're not in Lexington anymore. We're in Georgetown, so we know that we're going to lose a lot of business. And in order to keep anybody, we're going to have to pick up the vehicles and bring them back. But we did not have any work being done there, so I just wanted to make that clear. Our paint booth is not even ready, so I just wanted to make sure we cleared the air on that. That's where all those vehicles were coming from.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Kimberly Lynn. I'm a neighbor of the Muddy Ford neighborhood. I think I've seen all of you a time or two at a few other zoning issues. But we need to consider some things here. We absolutely, no, I did not sign in. Would you like for me to? I'll swear in if you want to.
You swear affirm what you're about to say to the truth, the best information?
I do.
You said Kimberly Lynn?
Kimberly Lynn. We all love Scott County. I've been here since 1994, Toyota transplant, retired in 2006, and still here. Love this town. We want business here. We want our community to grow. We want it to thrive, but we want it done correctly. Muddy Ford, if any of you have ever driven that road, is a treacherous road at best. Treacherous. I don't care what time of year it is, it's treacherous. It is no place for heavy equipment trucks, for tow trucks, for any kind of big machinery trucks to go down. It's just too little of a road. He stated that he has put $100,000 into a paint booth that was for one car a month in his original conditional use permit. That to me seems like a little overkill for one car a month. I appreciate that he wants to do business in Scott County. This is a hard county for people to do business in. It is. But the businesses that are here do a great job. And I think that in the right location, his business could be amazing, amazing. But Muddy Ford is not the place for it. That is an agricultural area. We don't need industry on Muddy Ford. It needs to be in an industrial area. We're gonna have to come back and change the zoning of that neighborhood if he is to put in an industry. This is just gonna get messier and messier. I think that there is a place for his business, but I don't believe it's on Muddy Ford Road. That is a nice little community of country houses and country people. And I don't see that having a paint business there would benefit the neighborhood at all. When our zoning issue came up with the cigar and bourbon bar, nobody in the neighborhood wanted that on their street. And what happened? It went to the Factory Outlet Mall and is doing a great business. And it is a huge asset for Georgetown at the Factory Outlet Mall, not in the middle of Oxford. These trucks and these tow trucks coming through Muddy Ford, that's not the place for it. That's too little of a road. We're gonna have to have all kinds of road problems and issues. I've not seen a business plan proposed by his party. No ingress or egress in case of an accident or a fire. All of this has been skipped over. He's just been allowed to start a paint business. Where's the safety protocols? Who has inspected this property? Who has made for his ingress and egress? Has he been to planning and zoning and drawn that up for them? We're like jumping way far ahead and granting a business that hasn't done the first steps for doing business in Scott County. Everybody has to obey the law, and we have zoning and we have rules for a reason. We're a civilized society, and without these rules, we won't be. And we cannot just allow an industrial business to come up in any neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Elise, will you or Joe address some of what she just said that concerns about things coming through, should come through that office?
Are you looking for like environmental?
No, what she was just talking about, the business plans and things on that nature. And Charlie, you may have to chime in on some of this.
I mean,
Not a tune variable, so.
the information that I at least have available is just that it would be, we just have what was approved in April of '23. I've not heard of what the plans are going forward. To my understanding is kind of testified by the applicant, this is a lot of mediation and trying to get like a plan together for the short term, but we've not heard a long term or even a longer than a month-long short-term thing.
Okay, but the applicant did everything he was supposed to through the office, I guess is what I need to know.
This was a review, so the applicant didn't like submit an application or anything like that. We issued a notice telling him that we were going to be holding a meeting to look at the permit, but again, we didn't get details on this is how many staff I'm gonna have here, this is how long we're gonna be doing this, we're moving this stuff in, we're adding these different features. So we were kind of uncertain to the extent of what would be going on and still are at least not with a written document, unaware of what their intents and purposes are. Joe can speak a little bit more to the enforcement stuff as well.
I think what you're getting at, did they come through and do everything that was required of our office?
Yes, through your office.
Based on what was approved, they wouldn't have had to come to our
Okay,
office for
that's
like
what
an
I wanted to make
encroachment
sure of.
permit or anything. But the problem was, obviously, with the additional building and the shutting down the shop in Lexington, what was approved is not what they're doing now. So in that sense, yes, they're in violation. That's why when we investigated it, I wrote the letter. Because it was obvious that this was not what was approved by the board. So I went through the steps to assure notification was given. So if you were to revoke the conditional use, you could do it legally. If you feel like that they could do this expanded operation, safely and appropriately, then they'd have to go through the process to get approval of the expanded conditional use. Unfortunately, when everything happened in Lexington or whatever happened with the business, they should have come first to our office and said, hey, you know, we'd like to add this additional building, you know, put this paint shop in enclosed structure, whatever they're gonna do, and we could have, you know, helped them through the process, apply, amend the conditional use just through the regular process, but that didn't happen, unfortunately.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else?
I was on that list.
If you'd like to speak, please.
I think Charlie's already sworn me in. I'm Randall Gregory. I live on Muddy Fork Road. I am part of the community. And I went today to look at the facility that's being talked about. I didn't see anything that I would be worried about. He's gone to the best of everything. So I wouldn't have any concerns with him painting a car where I live. But I am concerned about some things. And I do want to bring this out. I know I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I've been in this county for almost 71 years. It'll be 71 in June. And I do love this county. I love this county because as I was growing up until just a few years ago, most people didn't worry about what somebody else was doing. If it wasn't hurting me, you're okay. If you're paying the taxes on that property, you've bought it, it's your property. If you're not hurting me, do whatever you want to on it, as long as it's not illegal. That's been most of the county's feeling. But now then, we're getting people coming in, and they don't feel that way. So I do want to read some things that is very pertinent to this. I happen to go to church. I happen to believe in the Bible. I believe the Bible's true, and I believe what the Bible says is true, and we ought to obey the Bible. In Proverbs 26:17, it says, interfering in someone else's argument is as foolish as yanking a dog's ears. 1 Thessalonians 4:10-12 says, indeed, you already show your love for all the believers throughout Macedonia. Even so, dear brothers and sisters, we urge you to love them even more. Make it your goal to live in quiet life, minding your own business and working with your hands. Now, I believe that God wants us to work with our hands, and that's what James is wanting to do, is to work with his hands. I also believe that God wants us to keep our nose out of everybody else's business. I'll read another one for you if you want it. Here's one that is very good. 1 Peter 4:15-16. If you suffer, however, it must not be for murder, stealing, making trouble, or prying into other people's affairs. That's pretty heavy that you put that in with murder and stealing, prying into other people's affairs. God wants us to work with our hands and mind our own business. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any new facts? Let me state that. Before we go backwards on this, any new facts? Is it a new fact?
It's just I'd like to speak.
By all means.
And sign in.
Oh, come this way. We've been used to this by now. All right.
Forget them.
Your name, sir?
Landon Ray.
Landon Ray.
Ray, R-A-Y.
And you just sworn?
I have not yet.
Do you swear affirm what you're about to say to the truth, the best of your information and belief?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Landon Ray.
Ray, R-A-Y. I live over at 5127, just a little bit up. You don't see in that picture, but we're not very far at all. I just wanted to say that he has not caused any issues with how we function, even being close. Have not heard a thing from him. In terms of the road being unsafe, it has always been unsafe, even before he was there. I recall an issue a few years ago. I was waiting for a school bus, and I looked to my left on that curb and saw a Crown Victoria on its roof. Had nothing to do with the big machine. That turn has always been unsafe, and it will be unsafe as long as it's not gone fixed. Would a heavy machine on that make it a little more safe? Yeah. But there have always been heavy machines on that road. That's how people move their stuff. There are constant hay bales being transported just a little up the road. Not an issue to anyone. In terms of the paint booth, someone said that $100,000 for a paint booth just to do one car is a bit suspicious. He's just gone the length to make sure what he's doing is right. The only reason that you might find that suspicious if you don't understand what goes into that sort of thing. I do. I'm not putting down anybody who doesn't. I work on cars. I believe that building right there is a lot less than what it would take to restore classic cars. You would need several bays. You would need a whole lot of land to be able to take apart these old cars. You would need a paint booth plus a whole lot more, I believe. So I believe this is a little smaller than just one car a month in terms of restoring cars. I just believe that it's a discussion. It's a communication issue. I talked to, I forgot your name, sorry? James a few weeks back, and he shared with me his issues with his previous place, how he was fully intending on keeping the place open. Unfortunately, his landlord did not have the same opinion and kicked him out almost a month before he was supposed to be allowed to go. And he just had to pile everything into a few containers and move it up here. A lot of the buildings, they weren't really planned for, and I'm surprised how quick they're put up. It usually takes ages for construction, so I believe that's also a lack of insight. Didn't come forward and plan this before the buildings were put up. I believe it's just a lack of insight, this whole thing. But he's doing it right, I believe. I'm not a legal person. I believe he's doing it right, going through and making sure it's in a building. He has people come and pick up his waste. It's not just he's dumping it. And he's even gone as far as to offer to pay for I do some small painting myself. And he's even offered to just throw that in with his waste and have it be cleaned with me not having to pay him. He's been tremendously helpful, and I just believe it's a big misunderstanding in terms of filing things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think I saw your name anywhere.
I know, my name's not on there, but I do swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Charlie just skipped it now. Forget it. All right.
One by
Go ahead.
one.
All right.
I'm Earlene Arnett. I live at 5005 Money Ford Road. There's just one property between me and Mr. Harrington. I didn't plan to speak because I thought the presentation spoke for me, especially since we're talking about facts. But I do think that, the community focus of what belongs down there still hasn't quite been addressed. But the ladies know, because I was here before and was opposed to the conditional use. Charlie explained to me what that was, and I said, I think he fits in. So I think it was a good decision. But I'm also one for following the rules. So I'm now, okay, has he followed the rules? And do we have truly what a conditional use permit should be for a residential occupancy? If I had that right, Charlie. So, and I think too that when that happens, it kind of opens the doors for a lot of things. And I have sent an official email to Elise just to say that I'm opposed to this because we are a agricultural residential area. And things have been approved recently, just the 3 lots across the road for residents. In the S-curve, 3 developments that a larger area divided up for residents. So that area is beginning to even become more a residential area. We love our larger lots. I have 20 acres, I wish that you could have the rule that you have to have 20 or 40 acres in the county to kind of save some of this. But Muddy Ford is hilly, woody, and wonderful place to live. And I think that's what planning and zoning is all about, to keep the communities as communities, to keep the industrial as industrial. Isn't that what planning and zoning is all about? So thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you.
Can I speak?
Sure.
I do swear in. My name's Eric Rutledge. I'm 43 years old. My family has owned 5314 Muddy Ford Road for about 80 years. My grandfather started out there. My grandfather died. My father took over his property, and he co-raised me with my mother, a divorced mother. So I spent half time with my father and half time with my mother. So I'm very familiar with Muddy Ford Road. So familiar with Muddy Ford Road that I remember that church being built on James's property. I remember when it came in. I remember when they expanded on the building. Nobody cared. Nobody complained it was a church, right? Nobody complains about a church. They take money at a church. That makes it a business. Okay? So that's not the first business on Muddy Ford Road. Corner of Muddy Ford Road and Anderson Road, there was a grocery store. Does anybody remember the grocery store? Yes. I don't know how long it was there. 100 years. It was old. My father used to put me on a four-wheeler and take me down the road to buy a candy bar and a soda every time I came to see him every 2 weeks. So business on Muddy Ford Road is not new. And if we're going to talk about business, there's a guy that I'm sure he's been in front of you all 100 times. His name is Butch Gristle. Anybody know Butch? Some buck owns, 10 properties down there, trailers. He's a slumlord of Muddy Ford Road. If there's one business we don't want on Muddy Ford Road, it's a slumlord.
Work with me, Eric.
But he's up and down Muddy Ford Road, right? But we let that guy stay. Nobody complains about his property. Every time one of them goes up for sale, Butch is there at the auction table. Puts a new trailer on it every time, because that's the way those lots are segregated. You can't buy 5 acres down there unless you combine 3 lots. Because back then, Muddy Ford Road was considered, that's where we're going to put the trailer folks. So when you drive up and down that road, everything's a trailer. A single wide trailer on 2.5 acres. So the only way you can build a house is if you bought your buddy out of his trailer. My dad did that 4 times so we could build our house when I was a teenager, because my grandfather lived in a trailer on those 2.5 acre lots. So I know all about that. That's where the rich folk in Georgetown sent everybody, right? So you had to do that. Well, that's still in play now. So when Butch buys property, boom, 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 2.5 acres at a time. Nobody can buy a house. I can't buy a building permit on a 2.5 acre lot. The only thing I can do is put a house on it. That makes the value of my property very cheap. Meaning that when I go up and can't afford nothing, got to sell it, Butch sweeps in and buys it with all of his cash. Right? He's Capone of Muddy Ford Road. My point is we got a trailer park on Muddy Ford Road, and we're gonna penalize a guy for trying to run a business. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Virginia T. I signed up. The subject is facts. I didn't particularly like the original idea, but I respected what the board said. And what he was supposed to do, if he wanted to change it, was bring it to you guys, and to Elise and those guys. Didn't happen. Those are the facts. I think that it should be revoked. You wanted the facts, that's the facts. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll ask an open-ended question. Does anybody have anything new to add? Or relevant? New or relevant, we'll put it that way. New or relevant. All right. These are hard. Good? He's looking at me like, no, but yeah, all right. These are hard. We don't get paid enough for doing this, I can tell you that. These are very hard decisions to make, though. What I will say is, I do agree, facts are facts. There are some things in there, and the one that sticks out to me is the applicant shall return to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval in big, bold terms prior. I understand the situation, I do, okay? But it's prior. We also have to respect the enforcement officers that went out. We have a really good staff on planning and zoning. So those are some of the problems I see. The other problem is there has been a lot of work done since you originally came here. I'm not against business by any means. Everybody in this room can tell you probably what I do. So I'm not against business by any means in this county. But I do have a problem with this one just because of the nature in which the permit was written to begin with is now not the case. It's expanded, right? What should have happened, you should have came back and asked for the extra additional stuff. The 6-foot fence around the entire property, you're trying, I know that, and we're working on that. It hasn't happened all the way.
Was that to be around the entire property?
Charlie? I believe.
10 acres.
I believe it was more, it has to be around the activity, so not necessarily.
The
work area.
The work area. Yeah, we won't make you fence the whole thing.
The rest of the property, you can't see unless you're up.
That was for the outside park cars.
Outside park cars, yes.
Yeah, that's a 6-foot cover.
So there are some things that are there that concern me from that aspect. I do agree with Eric. I don't want to punish businesses by any means, and there's businesses on that road that run all the time. We're not here on those, unfortunately. We can be, but we're not here on those. So I do agree with that. But I do have some questions about some of the things. I'm going to ask you all, do you have any questions, comments?
I like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
When we first heard this, I did have some reservations, I'm sure you were aware, and from both sides, both having it and also from some of the people not wanting the business there. We did approve a business, and I felt comfortable. I mean, Charlie helped us out. It was fitting into the area. I mean, it was like working on tractors. I think that was the analogy that we made. Working on a car is like working on a tractor. Insulated building, it wouldn't intrude. Everyone agreed it might not be ideal, but it would coexist. I do feel like, though, we have way exceeded that. Definitely should have come prior, and now we're after the fact. It's too late to do it prior. Personal comments, though, I mean, I have reservations about a paint building and operation to that degree being in this neighborhood. So I don't know how y'all feel, but.
Go ahead.
Charlie, taking into consideration what he has done and should have done, what is your stand on this?
Besides this being very difficult.
Yeah.
Well,
Legally.
Legally, you're on solid ground to simply revoke because the rules weren't followed. Obviously, everything we do is not black and white. So you've got to look at, are there some, either, I don't say justifications, but some equities going perhaps both directions. I think perhaps the first question you should ask is, would you have approved what's there right now last April?
Yes.
And if you would have, had that been the circumstance, then I think it may be appropriate to then put in conditions that would protect the neighborhood from what you're hearing about now. And as I think Elise said, I said earlier, we would probably prefer to come back with a new application if that's the case. If you would not have approved all of this back then, because as the statute, the case law says, it's got to be something that benefits the community, but at the same time, it can't harm the area. So therefore, if it's beneficial and you'd like to do it and it would be otherwise appropriate, if you put reasonable conditions on it. Well, if this is so big now that you just really can't put reasonable conditions and you wouldn't have approved it last time, then chances are you don't need to be approving it this time. All right, can it then be pared back to what it was approved to be last year? Boy, that's about as hard a question as any of the others. Did Mr. Harrington operate in bad faith? It doesn't really appear so, no. If he had, that would make it easier because then you could say, no, you can't come in here and abuse community board and laws and whatnot and get away with it. Well, it really doesn't appear he's been in bad faith. It's been, difficult situation perhaps, certainly ill-advised. Never, ever, ever do anything before you come in here and ask. Not that we always do the right thing, and we always get it right, but it can never be right if you go ahead and do stuff without coming in first. I mean, period. And I can show you the house now. They had to cut the whole garage off because the guy built it without getting the inspectors out there and measuring. I mean, you just can't do that. But anyway, so if it's something that would have been and you can put good conditions on it, that may be something you want to consider. If it's not something that would have been approved, then you don't want to tell them, bring in a new application, because that's just a waste of everybody's time and effort. Do you want to revoke it altogether? Well, that's pretty severe. But can you put any part of the genie back in the bottle either? Thank goodness I'm only your attorney. I don't have to make decisions like that, because this is one of the more difficult ones I think you've ever had. And I've only been around here 40 years.
And we're emotional too, guys. I mean,
I would rather be sitting there than up here,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
So that's, that's the best way I can, put it in a semi-manageable format. You have the authority to revoke. You have the authority to say, give us a new application, we'll consider it anew. You have the authority to say, basically, you're in violation. Get rid of everything that exceeds what was done. Again, I'm not really sure how you do that, because one of the most important things was his business continued in Lexington. This was an overflow of long-term stuff of maybe one a month. Can't imagine how the gentleman's going to run a car business, any kind of body work or anything, on a car a month. So I don't know how you do that. But I think that's kind of like, if you will, that's the bundle that we're faced with, and that we've got to try to figure out some way to be fair to all involved.
Joe, you don't pay us enough to make these kind of decisions.
I think there's a couple questions that I have is, I have no doubt that the paint booth cost $100,000.
Of course, I'm making payments on that.
Oh yeah, trust me, I know. Those aren't cheap by any means. And they're environmentally controlled. However, what that does in my mind, and this is not anything expert, this is an opinion, what that does in my mind is trigger the need for an air permit, a minor source permit, something like that from the DEP, which now says, okay, is that a different category of zoning altogether, not in the A1? And I'm not going to put you on the spot to answer that right now. But does that now trigger a lot of other things that goes along with it? Those are the questions I have, and that's the problem I'm having is, with what you have now, it's much larger than the operation you started with. Does that make sense? So now there are certain triggers, I know you're shaking your head no, but now there are certain triggers that's going to hammer on, which may cause you entire problems that you don't even know about. And what I'm trying to say to you is, you may be in a worse position going forward than what you are in a better position. And so I know that doesn't sound good, but it is what it is. If you look at that, I'm not sure that all those triggers wouldn't come into play should you continue to go. The fact of the matter is, what we approved is not what's on the property now. These are hard decisions. Somebody has to make them, unfortunately. So Charlie, I'm going to try to word this motion carefully and properly, as best of my ability. And please, nobody react to these motions. I'm going to make the motion that we revoke the permit, but leaving the option for reapplication. And what I say, and the reason I do that, and I ask you not to respond to that, the reason I do that is I want a couple of things checked first. Okay? I want a couple of things checked to make sure you have the correct permits from the state, the city, and everybody else before you operate this. Okay? Before you come back in front of us, because that's what's going to be asked. I would check on the zoning that you have to go through. Okay? So there are multiple triggers here that I want you to step through. This is the best way that I can say, okay, let's walk through this as mature adults and make sure we can all play in the same ballgame. I'm not saying we're going to approve your permit. Don't take that the wrong way. What I'm saying is make sure all your bases are covered before you ever come back. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
So my motion is to revoke the permit and allow for a resubmittal application.
A second.
I got two. I'll take Tommy.
Well, could we just hold on and make sure I've got the motion? The motion is to revoke the permit with leave for the applicant to refile for a conditional use permit, but in order to return to the board, all necessary permits, whether that's natural resources, building, any kind, whatever they might be applicable.
Correct.
They've got to be there in place before he comes. And further, that there's no assurance that it's going to be approved.
That is correct.
Okay.
Did I get everything covered, Charlie?
I think it's pretty good. And Tommy?
Tommy, second the motion. Any questions or comments?
One question, do we have to look at, would the board be open to considering, I mean, if we don't have a majority vote, would want to consider a reapplication, would that be a waste of time, as Charlie said?
Sure, if we don't have a majority vote on this one.
If I might, before we move any further, let me make a suggestion, possibly on the motion. Actually, I think the motion's good, but I'd like to have just a little more specificity. But you mentioned a couple things in your preamble before you actually made the motion. One, that what's there is not what we approved.
Correct.
I'd like to clarify that by saying what's there is in excess or exceeds what we approved.
Agreed.
And I would like you to add in there that prior to that addition to what was approved, he did not come back.
Correct.
As he was instructed. That, I think, gives two excellent reasons for the revocation, and then after that, I think that's self-explanatory.
Agreed.
And if he agrees, Tommy, you agree on your
Yes.
second? Thank you, sir.
I think also bearing in mind too, during this period, your permit has been revoked, so you cannot work on this site until you re-up and gather that permit. And Charlie, I'd like that to be added as well.
I'm sorry, say it again.
He cannot provide services on that property until this permit is in.
Yes.
All right, I have a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There are none. Motion carries. All right, we got through that. That is all we have this evening. We're going to close the Board of Adjustments at 6:20.